So I want to welcome everyone to the Library Foundation's No Montana series. This is our second installment of this year's series. The Library Foundation enhances the offerings of the library. We fund some of the special things that aren't covered by taxpayer money, and this is a great example of some of the things the foundation funds. We also sponsor things like the public internet terminals and magazine database computers. And last year we got new software for the library that helps job seekers brush up on their keyboarding skills, which is increasingly more important in the workplace these days. But tonight we're honored to have as our speaker Montana's Poet Laureate, Sheryl
Noethe.
Thank you. Noethe. The Montana Poet Laureate recognizes and honors a citizen poet of exceptional talent and accomplishment. Sheryl is, now watch out for this, Sheryl is the recipient of a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, a Montana Arts Council Fellowship, the Cup Bank Hugo Prize in Poetry, and the Emerging Voices Award from New Rivers Press. Her second poetry collection, The Ghost Openings, in 2000, was awarded the Pacific Northwest Booksellers Award and the William Stafford Poetry Prize. And her most recent collection, As Is, was published by Lost Horse in 2009. And we're all lucky to get a copy tonight of that. Sheryl is also a Humanities Montana speaker, and we appreciate Montana Humanities and the Montana Cultural Trust and the National Endowment for the Humanities for helping bring Sheryl to us here tonight. So the topic is, My Soul Is, ... a question which requires many adjectives and metaphors to describe the hidden essence of self, comparing the soul to an animal, a dream, a wish, a place. It's rare for adults to be asked such a question, but it's also essential. So, please enjoy Sheryl Noethe.
Thank you, Carl. And, speaking of the Committee for the Humanities, because Poet Laureate doesn't carry any remuneration financially, being on the speakers list for the Committee for the Humanities, they pay my car fare and hotel and meals everywhere. Otherwise, I could not have traveled to the extensive manner that I've traveled. So they've been wonderful with that. And I don't know if you saw in the paper and on the news recently that Aung San Suu Kyi is now a member of the Parliament. And so I wrote a poem for her about 2 years ago, and I decided, okay, she's in the Parliament, the poem's done. So this is called Not Who He Was. Every soldier is someone's child. Orange-clad monks face rifles with open arms in a country where a nonviolent woman is imprisoned in a simple house which looks out onto a lake. When she steps outside, crowds gather, and the army stands guard. She hands a flower to a boy in uniform. Her serene gaze suggests the face of his mother, his sisters, alive? Could it be possible his father survived? He drops his weapon, enchanted. His face leans into a pale lily, pearlescent, numinous, a source of light. He tries to bow, but she reaches to stop him. Hope has outgunned this soldier, outdone him, tipped his face to heaven. He sees her like the lit heart of a burning candle, white-hot eye of flame floating at the center. He watches her shimmer beside him. He feels warmed in the darkness. There is something that he thought was dead inside. He is not who he was, and he is more himself than ever. One thing I've been spending a lot of time on is a greyhound, because the last Poet Laureate rode his horse across Montana giving his books away, and I kept waiting for the pony, but I never got one. I thought it was going to be part of the job, but so I take the greyhound instead. And so this is called Why I Suffer the Ruined Man. And it's kind of like a love poem to a stranger on the bus who is so annoying. Why I suffer the ruined man. On the bus, who continues calling across the aisle, head lolling back, bottle in his lap, barely conscious in the 8 hours since Deer Lodge. He's moaning, girl, girl, you, girl, hey, girl, girl, girl. His hand flaps weakly to catch my eye. I should move to another seat, right? He has eyes like Jesus, eyes like my dog, not a tooth in his head. Old, forsaken love, he has your glossy hair. Which, it reminds me of my belief that if you love something or someone, the more you love, the more you see people who remind you of who and what you love. And come on in. Larger your heart opens, and you live longer and better and happier. So I'm going to read you one that I wrote this poem because this quote by Oscar Wilde drove me crazy. It will drive you crazy too. Here it is. A really well-made buttonhole is the only link between art and nature. It's ridiculous, but I love it. In that place where there exists the undivided nature of sense and sensing, a thing among things, caught in the overlapping fabric, steering through the visible extraordinary, it makes a difference being part of it. Paul Valery, the painter, takes his body with him. By lending the body to the world, intertwining vision and movement, flickering between verbal and visual, you are in the story and out of it, whichever illusion you choose. Cézanne, all nature is on the inside. Quality, light, color, and depth are only there to awaken a welcome echo in our body. All things have an internal equivalence, arouse a carnal formula of their presence. My gaze wanders in the halo of being, a vivid disappearance. Someone appears as a vague streak of light. This image has a lonely perch. The eye is an instrument that moves itself, a means that invents its own ends. Mark Rothko, color itself is reason enough. The gentle obliteration of form, a selective night, two figures embrace in that gray swath, which is the sky, sea, and shore. Mark Rothko is one of my favorite painters, and he used to say that color itself is enough. You don't need any kind of definition between horizon, shore, sky, and sea. And so his work was called the color field, and he would have a strip of blue, a strip of yellow, a strip of red, a strip of black, and each of them would come to you at the same plane. He could make his colors radiate at the exact same level so that black never overtook yellow and yellow never overtook red. They were all, and so it was brilliant. But then he said that he figured that humans infected art. No, literature infected art. There should be nothing but the color. So, I like to argue with people over the centuries, especially if they're dead. Now, this poem is dedicated to Marie Curie, and it's called Radium. Marie Curie found the sun inside a rock, standing at the magnetron, breaking down pitchblende in her burner, measuring the energy in the ore, boiling it in 1,000 reductions until what was finally left was a shadow on the plate, a trace of dust, which she took in her palm and studied, carried it in the pockets of her apron, inadvertently brushed through her dark braid. It burned the skin on both sides of her hands. Her long hair fell out, and also her teeth. She had no color in her face. the reflection in her eyes bright as the green face of a watch in the night. This ore emanates rays over the millennia, which never weaken, slacken, nor shine, absorb nothing, have no reflection, remain unseen despite profound gravitational pull, lighting up our watch faces, X-rays, laser beams, mushroom clouds, contained in 7-mile-long centrifugal atom smashers, superheated explosions that only increase in size and duration. Something ignites the very air. Images of Marie show a delicate profile, an increasing pallor, her eyes dark circles, a sepia photograph, faint in the flickering past. The film crackles in perfect entropy. You can see each molecule loosen and fall away into history. This one is it's called Black Beauty, and I live right behind Mount Jumbo. And sometimes I see things, and sometimes I imagine I see things. So, Black Beauty, icy January night, sky so brittle it cracks the air. And there, in silhouette on the ridge, one black horse on the mountain's edge, still, seems to be looking back at me, my window of yellow light casting a half circle on the snow. Frozen, our eyes, the horse and I, even time gives at absolute zero. Not just a shadow or a wish. Like that, our sleek ponies are gone. Hooves slicing the world to rent the sky, bringing us closer to the god of horses, who happens to be ours, who happens to turn his back on occasion. Lined up in unspoken order, wild horses on the mountain, in the hottest days of summer, when the earth is brown, drop to their knees and roll in a dust bowl, rise, resume their places in the circle until each has washed with earth, and then they're off. So I'm sure there's all kinds of horses on Mount Jumbo, because I see them at night, I dream about them. They stare at me from the mountain into my bedroom window. This one is called Resolution. Stop wanting, stop waiting. No more shame, no blame. Sweep the house without remorse. Sing with the radio, forget the words. Defy grief. Take a twirl on the carpet. Pour water into a bowl without foreboding. Set it down, make a sound. To forgive is to remember God. If not, we keep an identity around pain. What suffers remains, and what is reborn. Maybe it looks like a hungry kid, a martyr, someone in a hood, a daughter run away again, another drunk abandoned brother. What suffers is reborn. Older than civilization, fear of snakes, fear of falling, fire. God is in the machine, reaching and reaching. Try not to stare at his hands. Helpless, sleeping body, one dimension or another, dreaming out of the proscribed lines. Animal mind. It thinks that I can breathe underwater and that I can fly. I love to write about dreams because when you're dreaming, your unconscious, which is taking over, which is like the animal of you, doesn't know your name or your address, and frequently doesn't even know your gender. I mean, if you think about your dreams, do you ever sign your name? Do you ever look in a mirror? Do you ever look at your clothing? Do you ever, I mean, in my dreams, I'm just always someone in the dream, but I don't remember who I am. So it's an interesting thing to try, is to, make contact with that, because it makes for great poetry. And also, not only does the unconscious not know your name, where you live, your gender, that sort of thing, but it thinks that you can breathe underwater with the animals and that you can fly. Do you fly in your dreams ever?
Sometimes.
Do you? When you fly, do you have to really work? Do you have to run and jump and leap, or do you just fly?
Pretty straightforward.
Nice. Yeah, you do that too? See, I run through gravel and fall down, and then I get up, and there's always guys chasing me in bowler hats, and then I leap and fall, and then when I get up flying and I go like that, they can almost reach my feet. So I have to keep my knees up around my chest, and it's just exhausting. You wake up the next day and you're just like beat.
Yeah, you need a better flight instructor.
Yeah, I do. But the
So what is that last poem called? I remember that.
resolution.
Oh,
Yeah. This is called syntax, which means the arrangement of words on a line. Poetry has all this fancy vocabulary, but you don't have to know it, you don't have to use it. Syntax. I was the smallest and least, afraid of the world and its beasts. Change the line break. I was the smallest and least afraid. I became a person by writing my story, a child's hidden despair in extremis. I found, like a door would open in a dream, a floating place, a cell, uncovering, a stanza inside. I could steady motes of dust riding on the wind's tide. In the unconscious, where I am safe to dream, where the animals we are and try to hide rise from the body which is paralyzed, visits old friends, the dead, the past. I became a person by writing my story, free to change the syntax, free to delete or select all or to open a new window. The world begins with words. It didn't matter what I didn't have or who I couldn't be. When everything reminds you of what you cherish, it is possible to love the world, running with arms wide as a window open to bring in the night's breeze, dark stars on its breath, and monsters on their knees. You know, I've always been a free verse poet, but more and more rhyme comes in because it makes the rhythm really stronger. So I'm fighting myself, but I'm rhyming. This is dedicated to Garcia Marquez, the great poet. And it's called Reading Garcia Marquez with a Slight Fever. Voluptuous exchange of bright fruit, palm trees, giant orchids, sidelong glances, shadows and dreams. Green, he said. Green, how I want you green. Argentine moon, silverfish, mirrors and a breeze. Branches laughing with birds in wild feathery hats. River songs accompanied by bells. He said, far away, my voice was dressing up like a cricket. The world was at war again. He died young, murdered by the civil guard, thrown into a mass grave. He said, I hold the no that you gave me in the palm of my hand. Almost white it is, a tiny lemon of wax. Still, he fought best with words, horse upon the mountain, ship upon the sea. A dreamer, a soldier, never should be. Green, how I want you green. One of his most famous poems was that poem, Green, horse upon the mountain, ship upon the sea. And I hold the no that you gave me like a white wax of lemon. Oh, the images of the South American writers are so profound and magical realism as well. When he says, off in the distance, my voice was dressing up as a cricket. That's almost as good as buttonhole. I rode the Greyhound bus hundreds of hours so far, but I was not on the bus that crashed in January. And but it was my route and it was my bus. And so I've written this poem as a dedication to the people that were on the bus. First, the infants flew through broken windows, laughing in surprise, trailed by blankets and bonnets, sweeter, lighter than air. The sleeping never woke. Milk, whiskey, and blood. Empty bottles rolling the aisles. Purses, shoes, backpacks, suitcases, jackets, boxes, sweaters, pillows, duffel bags, cell phones, careening through the frigid air like broken toys. A woman calling for someone. With a horrible sound, the bus twisted and slid, fell sideways, rolled. It's a wicked curve near Bonner. Black ice invisible on that miserable, notorious curve onto 290. Quiet, then moaning and weeping. A woman's name, a woman's voice, shrieks a name over and over. In the ominous silence, there is no answer. The first responders saw the wounded wandering, searching the road and fields of snow. Worst wreck I've ever been on, he said. From space, it appeared those souls exploded, shooting stars startled at their own momentum before peeling off in each one's particular destination. The bus had barely stopped ticking. The highway patrolman wept beside the wreck, turning his face from the camera. So, I would like to show you this idea that I have for you to try to make a poem. And it's my favorite, and it's the most basic and simple, and I'm going to write instructions on the chalkboard. So, some people like to say my soul, some people like to say my essence, my spirit, my invisible self, my indivisible self, but I usually just call it my soul is. And if you look at it, look at your soul, your invisible self, essence, as other phenomena. For example, what animal of flight is in your soul? Do you have a hawk? Do you have a little wren? Do you have an eagle? So first of all is, what is the flight of your soul? Which leads then, of course, to what is the animal that lives inside of you secretly? What is the fuel for your soul? What does your soul require to go on? What is the color of your soul? Or maybe your soul is a lilac, so that would be flower. Then, what are the dreams of your soul? What gem? And anything else you want to bring into it. And one of my favorites for this one is my soul is a cowboy, all dirty with his muscles. I only wish I had his horse. And children, hi, come in. Children always respond really well to things of the imagination because their imaginations are huge. But those of us who have to make a living and pay for the car and the car mechanic and taxes and hospital bills, and our imaginations get squished, and it starts in school. And if you keep your imagination powerful, you live longer and happier. And there was an article in the Week, which is a news magazine, a weekly news magazine, and they said that people whose imaginations are still in use live longer and have more integrated lives. And so we all have it in us. We all have so much in our DNA. We're all poets. We're all singers and artists, but we don't let any of that out because we have to be normal in the real world. And so we lose this possibility. And so poetry, all you have to do is take the time, 10 minutes, an hour a day, to sit down and write. And when they say that when people go to a therapist or spend a year writing, the results of their improvement are the same. That when you take what's inside of you and put it outside of you on the page, you're freeing yourself from it, and it becomes a phenomena rather than your insides. So sometimes poetry is to say what you haven't been able to say ever. Sometimes poetry is speaking the unspeakable. I had terrible things happen to me when I was a child, but I just forgot them completely and then acted all wild and out of control in my early 20s. I didn't know the motivation, but I had really disturbing dreams. And the more I wrote, finally, the more I remembered. And the more I was relieved of thinking that I was tainted, that I was bad, but that actually I was just a child and it wasn't my fault. It took me 50 years to figure that out. And if I hadn't had writing, I don't know if I would have gotten through it. And so it is essential that you make your creativity a part of your life. So you're not going to get graded. I will collect the poems and read them anonymously, because when you hear your poems read by a professional poet, you hear the beauty that you don't hear in your own self. What a great sentence that was. The beauty you don't see in your own self. But so there's paper and pencils here in the box, and I would like you to just try. My soul is, and maybe you're a gardener, so maybe your soul smells like wet black earth. Maybe your soul has a horse that it can ride. Maybe your soul in your dreams can go back in time and forward in time. And generally, you know what you are by the things that you like, because we don't recognize something if we don't have it. That's how Captain Cook tricked the Hawaiians. They did not see the major masts of the boats coming. All they saw was a blank horizon and then a bunch of rowboats drop down out of nowhere and then come rowing in. They had never seen a ship. They could not conceive of it. And that's true for all of us in many ways. And so it's always good to keep a hold of those things that resonate inside of us. What kind of music do you like? Are you bells? Are you a rainy day? Oh, there's more. Think about, maybe you're a climate, and maybe you're an event of nature, like a waterfall. Maybe you're a place. Maybe you live here in Montana, but the place that you clutch in your soul is the neighborhood where you grew up. So let's take about 10 minutes. Do not censor yourself. I used to imagine, you know the rock and roll singer Lou Reed? He's this dangerous, leather-clad. Well, he used to lean against my wall and smoke a cigarette and say, well, you can write a good letter, but you're no serious artist. And then I would just stop. But I've been in a group of writers for 18 years now, and I write for them. And Lou Reed is out of the picture. They trampled him coming in. And so you can't edit yourself. You can't censor yourself. You can always go back and revise. But sometimes you'll say the wrong word, and it's the best word you could have done. That's happened to me, where I've written the wrong word and it makes it have so much more meaning. So please put on your courage armor and write a few ideas about the essence and what's in your soul and where it is and what it likes to do. And it can be an idealized place or action or people back that you've lost. So things that you love, You recognize beauty in what you love because you have it in yourself. So let's just try. It's called a suspension of disbelief. Some people may be happy to read their own work. Other people, if your handwriting is as legible as possible. But I can translate third grade kids' writing, so. Are you going to read yours, Carl?
I'll submit it to the anonymous pile.
Great. You're like all the fourth grade boys. This will be the anonymous pile, thank you.
That's right.
Oh, look at all this. Couldn't be more wonderful. And if you're not done, you just keep on writing, Barbara. Just keep on writing.
I'm just copying.
Oh,
Make it legible.
okay. My soul is a soft brown animal, warm in the sun on the daffodil hillside, hedgehog rolling in emerald grasses. Violins sweep the octaves, wildly fill the air with wind. Diamond tips on buds of spring tremble, chimes that call and fill up my wants with everything. Lovely! Lovely! My soul is wandering where I am. Many miles traveled, but the counters remain unknown. Was I not looking? Once I knew, or thought I knew, my soul was in the mountains. Yet, like the road not taken, that path lays far behind. So my soul vacillates, yet must look ahead. What a great verb, vacillates, wonderful. And if I read something wrong, interrupt and correct me, please. Well,
I think
thank
that
you.
under the table. I think that might have said countries.
Yeah, kick me under the table.
I think that word might have been countries earlier.
But the countries remain unknown. Oh, many miles I've traveled, but the countries remain unknown. Was I not looking? I love that. I love that the poet addressed a question to the reader, because that way the reader is brought right into the poem. Was I not looking? You know, it's a wonderful way to use the voice. My soul is a colorful filming of both a colorful a colorful flaming of both land in a humorous either or landscape, half kitten, half puppy, male and female, gay and straight, amidst fighting roosters, strutting their ignorance, spewing their limitations. A lush rainforest, a book being written or read in the midst of back-to-back unending sporting spectatoriums, mistaking itself for meaning and purpose. My soul is the rumor of a life lived on my terms, remembered fondly tomorrow. Wow, I hope I did it justice. My soul is clouded, gray as a mouse, an old mouse with a crooked stick up the trail to nest. Nestled warm with none but a warm zen bear and jazz of piano. The soul is lonely, even with company, untethered until the jazz begins again. Terrific. And you know, the form that you all used, I mean, each of you chose a form that shows me how to read it. And that's one of the most important things about writing poetry, is that you let the reader on with your line breaks. Hi, Annie Gard.
Hi. I know I'm so late, but I
We just finished writing, and so I'm reading everyone's poems aloud.
People may not come expecting to write, but they're going to be writing.
I'm tattling.
Well, you know, when I go to like a PTA, and I'm with a group of adults, and I ask them to write a memory, half of them end up weeping. Because this doesn't get touched upon in day-to-day life. No one asks you those deep, stirring questions. No one asks you to become so contemplative and introspective and then put it into verbs and adjectives and line breaks. And so when it happens to an adult who isn't, you know, customarily writing regularly, it's really difficult. So that's why I tried to keep it kind of a secret that I was going to make y'all write. But you did, and my soul is a dancer exploring space, leaping, twisting, balancing in soft, fresh air to music fluid and rhythmic, driving or languid. In my mind, I am always choreographing, longing to move as the music sings. In my heart, I feel the passion of red, the calm of blue, the rebirth of green. Dancing is my breath, my life source. I know. It always amazes me, the responses that I get from people who don't think or don't know that they're poets. My soul is fluttering, akimbo, moving like a pulse from heart to throat, convinced I can win this race. My soul is floating on the broad back of a swimming horse. My soul goes deep enough undersea to become bioluminescent. My soul isn't a first-grade boy who is free of guile or dishonesty, reaching up to take his mother's hand, looking with eyes so clear it's like a long drink of the truth. My soul rides the invisible, craves what isn't seen, the in-between, the crack of what is hidden. My soul is a rabbit. It lives in my stomach. I like to feel when it catches my food. My soul is old, walking the hallways of ancient palaces, always an echo, a suggestion of someone having stepped just out of sight, a scent in the air from a flower I'll never know. The white cat curls on the coverlet and stares at me with a question. Walks through the front screen door with eyes bluer than crockery. My soul hides in the lush green foliage. The golden cock strikes out, shredding the flesh of those who come too near. I carry the tiger to the mountain, centered in Tai Chi serenity. Wow! You all confirm my belief that we all are poets. I mean, it's a lot of pressure for 15 minutes to sit down and write a poem when it's not your habit. But these are wonderful.
Do you teach in the schools in that poetry thing like?
In the Missoula Writing Collaborative, yes, I do. Yeah.
Can't imagine anyone getting me to write words down like you just did.
Really?
The quilter poet
One
in
of
the
those
family
was
will
his,
verify.
yeah. Wow.
I'm honored.
Yeah.
I'm really
Thank you.
honored.
Thank you.
Well, I believe that poetry is the connection of souls. And so when people get together and make poetry, they're attached to each other in a way that they never were before and is rare. Because you told your truth. You revealed. Yes?
Even as little as you wrote there versus the notion of, well, just write a poem about something you think or feel.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
you know.
That's too
like-
general.
Yeah.
You need specifics. You need to just nail it right down. I mean, the wildest kids love form.
where were you when I was a child?
Oh,
She was a child too.
yeah.
Right. Or not.
I was being punished for being lippy.
Yeah. So was I. I spent the 3rd grade in the hall.
Really? Well, they used to put me in the cloakroom. Remember cloakrooms?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I went through everybody's pockets. I got chewing gum, I got lunch, I got change. So they wouldn't even let me go in there after that. Punishment? Are you kidding? I can loot. It just set me on a bad course. Oh, I'm so curious about asking about who did what, like who carries the tire to the mountain. That's you! Wow! That's amazing. See, I couldn't even pin the poems on who wrote them.
The golden cock and the carry the tiger to the mountain are Tai Chi.
And you practice Tai Chi? Wow. It's like slow motion martial arts. And it's balance.
The poetry of martial arts.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's nice. You really do. You get grabbed by poetry. And like when I teach haiku, which is a 5-7-5, all day long I accidentally speak in haiku because the mind loves order. It loves a system. And I think it was some composer once said, if you can make the boundaries, then within them there can be complete chaos. And so that's why a form gives you security. And once inside that form, you can just go nuts or go deep. And I love, my soul is clouded, gray as a mouse, an old mouse with a crooked stick up the trail. Hey, I didn't write this one. My soul is a tiny mountaintop village high above the Mediterranean. You will never drive to get there, but only hike up and up, heart pumping, fat melting, youth returning, 365 stone steps, 1,000 years old, and at the top, a taverna, a table, a Negroni, an almond cake, a view for two, my soul and you. Somebody's gotta fess up. That's so beautiful. Wow, I'm so sorry I missed it, but it almost worked out better that way because it was such a surprise to find such a lovely piece. So I think I did read everyone's? Okay. See how good I am with anonymous? And I have to tell the kids, okay, I won't look at you, I won't say your name, I won't look in your direction, and then they go, okay, it's enough. Shuffle it. So I have to shuffle all the papers, and then I get done reading it, and the kid who read it, who is so demented on anonymity, goes like this. I don't have to say the name because they're there hiding.
What a gift he gives to see ourselves as others see us.
Yeah. In fact, if we saw ourselves as someone else sees us, we wouldn't recognize ourselves. And you know, Gurdjieff says 99% of what we think of ourselves is based on what we think others think of us. What a prison. I was very lucky to have worked at the school for the deaf for 13 years because we partnered up and went to a big carnival or Six Flags kind of thing. And I was with a profoundly deaf child with, now I've forgotten the name of his, they used to call it mongoloid.
Down syndrome.
Thank you. Severe Down syndrome, severely deaf. And he wanted to hold hands and run and leap over the coiled ropes and electric cables that were all over behind the rides. So we did. We held hands, we ran, we jumped over, then we screamed in triumph. And I didn't care what anybody thought of me. It was such freedom. It was just so great.
Roger Rosenblatt, the essayist,
Yeah?
said 50 things he's learned in life or something, and one chapter was, nobody's thinking about it.
Yeah! It's true. Everyone's walking around going, do I look fat in these pants? You know? Everybody's just eating up, and they're not looking at anyone else or judging or...
The only person is the one majoring in sociology, sitting at the mall watching you all go by. They are looking at you, because they find all of you fascinating.
Well, we are all very fascinating. And poetry is just the perfect expression of all that fascinating, unique, tucked away beauty and power. Because if you can access your poetry self, you can roll with the punches. You know, I feel like poetry was a lifeline for me. It did save me. When I was in 5th grade, I came from a family of alcoholism, battering, sexual molestation. I bit my nails until they bled. I went to bed until I was a teenager. I twitched, I made noises. But in 5th grade, one teacher said, "You're going to be an author and you're going to sell books." And my life changed. My life totally turned around and I became an author. And suddenly I had an identity, I had a future, and the things that I've done have broken the limits of anything my family ever expected. They still don't quite get what it is I do.
Do you write prose or short story?
I'd
short
love
stories
to.
or anything?
I
Or
grew
is it
up.
almost all in
It's all poetry. I grew up reading Dorothy Parker. It was the only book in the house. I found it, I read it 7 times. But I can't write a short story if somebody had a knife to my throat, because I have a short attention span. Yeah, really quick. I forget what my characters look like. And then I may start out, I've taken courses in New York at Columbia in prose, and I start out like this, and then it goes woo, woo, and then it's poetry. It's like a tornado, just spirals down into poetry. And I think Anne Sexton said, poetry is turning used furniture back into trees. So is there anything you all want to talk about? Or questions or remarks, or were you a little uncomfortable writing? I don't, Barbara, you weren't, were you? You weren't uncomfortable writing, were you? Because you just took right to it.
Well, it's just hard to get started.
But sometimes people feel a little intimidated by expressing and exposing that much of themselves, but
To me, it's the format. When I look at poetry, I try and figure out the prose lines of it, and then the spacing and the pauses and everything. So if I turn it around and you say to me, write a poem, I just think about how the words go together so that it looks like a poem. But I don't see the difference between the poem and the prose. It's more like the space is used differently, and the words and the sound, because poetry is often read.
it's meant to be.
Yeah, and so I guess I don't grasp the difference. I can see it, prose and poetry, and big long tomes and everything, but to me it's just taking prose and squeezing it down and getting the spacing and thinking about where the lines and the punctuation is in relation to it. But it's still words. It's not separate from prose.
Yeah.
It's just more sparse or something.
Well, and I think that when my students go, what's the difference between poetry and prose? I say, the secret of poetry is the line break.
Yeah.
Because in prose you have a sentence and a period and a sentence and a period, but in poetry you have a line and it breaks at the right time, like if your heart needs to beat or you need to take a breath, and then there's a line break, and then there's line break. So a poem looks.
Well, one of your poems where you put the word afraid and you paired it and then you separated it, I think.
What word?
I think it was Afraid.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
the one called Syntax, where I
Right.
changed the meaning of the poem
Yeah,
by adding a
just
period.
By adding a period or by what line you put it on, because people tend to read lines.
Yes.
And so if you move it up or down, even without a period, because we didn't see your period.
Yeah, yeah. Oh. I was the smallest and least afraid of the world and its beasts. I was the smallest and least afraid. It's so interesting, you know, to talk about. It's like the mind thinking about itself. So, do any of you use writing professionally?
I'm a lawyer, so it's quite different than writing poetry.
Oh, yeah.
So,
It's
very
very.
linear. But, you know, I mean, to write well, though, actually, just keep it simple. I mean, short sentences generally work better. Just get to the point, get rid of the verbiage.
Yeah. Also, use the simplest and smallest word.
Yeah, I mean, basically a layperson's style works best. I mean, there's certain legalese terms that are handy when you're, whatever, a clerk's going to read a judge's clerk, but you don't need to make it too complicated, really.
Yeah.
Unless you don't have a case. Then you start threading the needle.
Kathleen, are you off?
I have to be too sure.
Oh! Do you want your poem? Yeah. Thank you. And when I get back from Minnesota,
And I get back.
we'll go for a walk.
That sounds great.
There you go. I knew that was you. I knew it. I knew it.
You know me too well.
Yeah, it's true. I know her too well.
Thank you, Sheryl.
Thank you. I'm wondering if Carl is going to recite or read. You gave me one. Did I? Oh. Oh. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. You think I did it? I read it. Did it have something at the end like a view for two, my soul, and you?
Maybe.
It's anonymous.
Yeah. True to the spirit of anonymity. But that's what I guess. I don't know why.
You read that, right? Yeah.
I did. I did. Well, I want to thank you for coming. And you know, we will always be connected. I mean, you look familiar to me. All three of you look very familiar to
We
me.
come to poetry readings.
You must
and
be
lady stuff,
part
and
of
we've
the,
heard you
oh,
read
okay, yeah, that's
We
why.
lived across from Carolyn and Fred.
Oh!
and Mark and Pam for many years.
Oh, those are some of
Till a
my
few years ago.
closest friends. I'm so glad you came. Do you want your poems back?
Yeah. And Ed was my 11th grade teacher in 1963-64 at Helena High.
Ed Leahy?
Yeah.
Oh my God, he must have been a wild man. He hadn't started trembling yet from the the manganese.
Yeah, he had a hard life. Good man.
Oh, he lived it every second.
Yeah. And used up the lives of others too.
Yeah. He was difficult, he was.
Yeah.
He was a great lion.
Mark has been so loyal. And
Yes. Your poetry isn't like his or Mark's, but it's accessible like theirs are. I mean, to someone that doesn't see themselves as a big poetry person or anything else, when I hear you read or when I read something, it's like, well, yeah, as opposed to poetry as separate. And what in the hell are they talking about?
who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that much also, as well as the content.
Well, I'm trying to remember which poet said, if it ain't a poem, it ain't no pleasure. But somebody said that.
That's a good line.
Thank you. It was lovely to meet you. And when I see you in the streets, say hi, because we're connected now. We've created together. And if you look on the back, there's a blurb by Martin Sheen.
Oh.
Coming at you. Yes, I am. I'm just a beast that way.